In Fallow Creek, time doesn't march forward. It staggers backward, dragging every soul with it. The first to notice was old Mrs. Henderson, who watched her microwave's digital display count from 5 o'clock down to 0-100, then continue into negative numbers. Then came the grandfather clock in the library, its pendulum swinging the wrong way, with a sickening, oily smell of aged brass and damp wood. Smartphones flickered as their screens displayed yesterday's date, while wristwatches ticked relentlessly toward hours already lived. The air grew thick with ozone and the metallic tang of wrongness, as if reality itself was rusting at the seams. People woke to find their morning coffee cold, their breakfasts half-digested, their memories of the coming day already fading like dreams. But the true horror wasn't the clocks. It was what happened when they reached zero. Because in Fallow Creek, midnight doesn't bring a new day. It peels back the old one, layer by rotting layer. A single rule governs this place, enforced not by law but by raw, primal terror. Never, ever try to fix it. The hand frantically yanks a battery from a wristwatch, then flings it away as if it burned. In the town square, the clock tower's hands visibly jerk and stutter counterclockwise, grinding against the mechanism. This is what happens when time itself grows sick, when the very rhythm of existence begins to rot from within. Fallow Creek, Ohio, population 117, a place where every porch light felt like a fading ember, and the crisp October air carried the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The town seemed to exhale with the setting sun, its streets emptying as shadows pooled in the alleys between the old brick storefronts. But beneath that peaceful veneer, there was a stillness that felt watchful, as if the very ground remembered something the townsfolk had tried to forget. Picture a postcard-perfect slice of Americana, where every neighbor knows your name, your business, and your grandfather's business. It's the kind of place people rarely leave. For years, they said it was the strong community that held them here. Now, in hushed tones over bitter coffee, they whisper the truth. The town itself won't let them go. John Miller had sought the quiet a year ago, fleeing the city's relentless noise and his own private losses. For his daughter Lily, this small town was meant to be a fresh start. Yet, as the slow afternoon stretched on, a new kind of quiet settled in the store. A thick, watchful stillness that felt less like peace and more like a held breath. It was the quiet of a place listening back. John smiled at Mrs. Elms, a stern woman in her 70s, whose gaze felt like a physical weight. The air in the shop carried the scent of old paper and something faintly metallic, like cold iron. Her welcome had been a veneer of politeness, thin as old varnish over weathered wood. A silence settled, thick and watchful, broken only by the distant scratch of a branch against a window pane. She pays, her movements unnaturally slow and deliberate. As she leaves, John notices the vintage pendant watch around her neck. Its hands are moving backwards, each tick a tiny reversal of time. He frowns, chuckling to himself as he turns to Lily. The air in the shop suddenly carries the faint, metallic scent of ozone. John dismisses the strange observation with a casual remark. Guess battery's dead in that old thing. Might want to let her know. Lily looked up, her face draining of color. She shook her head violently, a frantic denial. No, Dad, don't. John's dismissive tone hung in the air. Don't what? It's just a watch. A profound quiet descended, thick and unnatural, swallowing his words. Lily's reply was a fragile whisper that seemed to struggle against the room's oppressive weight. They're all like that. Her final, breathless plea, just look, carried a scent of ozone and old dust. John's smile evaporated. His gaze darted between the wall clock above the door and the digital timer on the coffee machine. A sharp, metallic scent, like ozone, pricked at his nostrils. The air thickened, growing damp and cold against his skin. From somewhere unseen, a faint, wet scratching began to whisper against the wall. Near the butcher's display, a cheap plastic clock ticked and hummed with a low, mechanical whir. Its analog hands moved in a slow, deliberate waltz, sweeping counterclockwise against all reason. Beside it, a digital timer's red numerals bled from 2:05 down to 2:03, counting down an unknown deadline. This was the first, irrevocable crack in the fabric of reality itself. The town's secret was hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. When John inquired about it, the friendly faces of Fallow Creek hardened instantly. Mike, a burly man in his 50s, grew visibly nervous, his hands tightening on the counter. Clocks? Huh, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Don't worry about the clocks, John. They keep their own time here. You should too, John. But how does anything function? The air grew heavy with the scent of old paper and static. School schedules? Doctor appointments? Mike leaned in, the scent of sawdust and sweat hanging in the air. You just feel it, in your gut. You get a feeling when it's time to go. A primal knowing that bypasses reason and settles deep in the bones. We don't record things much anymore, and you never try to alter them. Old Man Henderson attempted it, back in '98. He fixed the church clock. The mechanism wound to a perfect tension. Mike's gaze grew vacant, as if glimpsing some terrible, private memory.
They discovered his body in the bell tower at dawn. The coroner's report listed his age as 143.
He had been 52. John's obsession drove him deep into the town's dusty archives, scouring crumbling documents for answers. Meanwhile, Lily began sketching disturbing images. Houses with doors where windows should be, people whose shadows faced opposite directions. The child complained of overwhelming déjà vu so intense it left her stomach churning and head throbbing. While the journalist hunted for truth in records, the little girl was beginning to perceive the reality that lay beneath. Then she noticed other things. The morning shadows fell west, not east. An impossible geometry. In the pantry, mold retreated from bread like a receding tide, and conversations sometimes carried the metallic tang of arguments yet to come. John found Sarah by the town's rusted, silent train tracks, her rebellious demeanor now fractured by raw fear. Her voice trembled as she spoke, the words carrying a weight that settled in the cold evening air. "It's not just the clocks, Mr. Miller." She gestured weakly toward the town, her hand shaking. "It's everything." A long pause followed, broken only by the faint scent of ozone and rust. "It's seeping. My little brother drew our dog last week, but the dog died yesterday. In the drawing, the dog is alive and playful. The date scribbled in the corner is next Thursday. The paper feels unnaturally cold and carries the faint scent of ozone." John's voice cracked with frustration. "Why does everyone just accept this?" Sarah's eyes well with tears, her voice trembling as she whispers. "Because the last person who didn't, my uncle, he tried to smash all the clocks in his house. Said he was resetting the system." The air grows heavy as Sarah continues, her words barely audible. "He didn't die of old age, mister. Miller's end wasn't from age or illness. It was a death of youth, of a life that had never truly begun." The air in the room carried the metallic tang of old pennies and the damp chill of a forgotten cellar. Witnesses, their voices hushed and frayed, claimed his final sound was not a word, but a wet, struggling gurgle. It was a sound that spoke of water, in a place where there should be none. A suffocation from within, as the clock's ticking grew more frantic. John felt a primal dread take hold. The air grew heavy with the metallic scent of ozone, and a cold, damp chill seeped through his clothes. He could hear faint, rhythmic scratching from within the clock's wooden casing, a sound like bone on wood. Driven by his daughter's safety, John made his choice. He would break the one rule and attempt to fix the clock. In John's kitchen, he laid out his tools beside Lily's favorite childhood wall clock, its cheerful painted sun and moon face now a bitter reminder. The air carried the faint scent of ozone and old wood, a cold dampness clinging to everything. Then, with a soft scraping sound, the clock's hands began to move backward. Each reverse tick felt like a mocking metronome, counting down toward something he couldn't name. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit pressed tightly against her chest. Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with a primal dread. "Daddy, please," she pleaded, the air growing heavy around her. "It's listening." John turned, his voice gentle but missing the tension coiling in the room. "It's just a clock, sweetheart. I'm just gonna make it tell the right time." He pried open the back panel, revealing an impossible mechanism within. The components turned in directions that strained the mind, a visual dissonance that made the room feel unstable. A metallic scent, like ozone and old iron, filled the air as he steadied his trembling hands. With a final, decisive motion, he used tweezers to physically reverse the central gear. It clicked into a jarringly normal position, and the very air in the room seemed to still. The last tick faded into nothingness, leaving a vacuum of sound. Then, a new metallic rasp began, sharp and deliberate. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and old brass. T-I-C-K, T-O-C-K, T-I-C-K, T-O-C-K. Forward it marched. The rhythm felt wrong. Each beat a deliberate, metallic intrusion into the quiet. A sharp, coppery scent pricked the air, like ozone after a strike. The sound wasn't keeping time. It was pulling something toward him. John's shaky laugh of triumph barely escaped his lips. "See? Just a broken," he started to say. Then the kitchen light bulb exploded, not with a pop, but with a sickening, impossible sound of glass unbreaking. Lily's scream tore through the room. John whirled, his gaze snapping to the window. Outside, the night had been consumed, not by darkness, but by an absolute, erased nothingness. The air thickened, turning icy and dense, carrying a faint, metallic scent like ozone and cold iron. Narrator. He had done it. He had injected a single point of correct time into a system flowing in reverse, and the system recoiled. In the ensuing absolute quiet, a new noise began to form. It was a slow, dragging, deliberate shuffle, emanating from the blackness of the corridor. The air grew thick with a static charge, carrying the faint, coppery scent of ozone. A form materialized from the gloom. It was Mrs. Elms from the corner store. But something was profoundly off. Her movements were a stuttering, mechanical reverse. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and decay, a wrongness that clung to the skin. She retreated into the kitchen, her unblinking gaze locked on John. Then Mike from the hardware store moved like a film reel played in reverse, his motions jerky and mechanical. Dozens more followed, the townsfolk all moving in backward procession, converging on the house. They were drawn to the singular, agonizing sound of that one correct clock, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the marrow. Their mouths contorted in speech, but the sounds that emerged were reversed. Guttural, wet utterances of linguistic nonsense. Their eyes were empty pools of collective memory, reflecting nothing but shared trauma. Lily's sobs cut through the unnatural quiet, her voice trembling with raw terror. She pleaded, "They're not them. They're their echoes. Turn it off, Daddy!" John's hands trembled, slick with cold sweat, as he fumbled with the clock's ancient mechanism. Outside, the townsfolk pressed against the grimy windows, their mouths inverted into silent, screaming O's. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and old rot as he worked, each breath coming in ragged gasps. With a final, desperate motion, he yanked the gear backward to its original, impossible position. CLICK. The clock resumed its unnatural backward cadence. The silhouettes in the windows became motionless, frozen in their unnatural vigil. Then, with a chilling synchronicity, they began to retreat. Walking backwards with impossible precision, they dissolved one by one into the waiting, absolute dark. In the kitchen, the shattered bulb's fragments drew together like metallic filings to a magnet, sealing with a soft hiss before flooding the room with sterile, cold light. Outside the window, the distorted, writhing landscape of Fallow Creek snapped back into the familiar, quiet darkness of a normal night. A calm that felt more like a held breath than peace. 1 week later, inside John's store, the air carried the faint, sweet smell of old paper and a lingering, metallic tang. He now moved with the same slow, deliberate cadence as the others, a measured, almost ritualistic pace that whispered of a profound, internal change. He deliberately avoids the clocks, their silent faces holding secrets he's not ready to know. Lily sits at the counter, her small fingers moving methodically across the paper. Her drawing depicts them both standing in the store, but the air carries the faint scent of ozone. In her illustration, they face away from each other, an invisible chasm captured in charcoal. The date she scrawls in the corner is last week's date. John now understands. You don't fix the clocks fix you. They are not broken devices. These are valves. Pressure releases for a reality flowing the wrong way. To correct one is to dam the flow and let the backlog of what was spill out into what is. John approached Mrs. Elms, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and iron. She met his gaze and offered a slow, deliberate nod. Her movements weighted with unspoken understanding. A whisper of ozone hung between them as John returned the gesture, his own nod measured and grave. In that silent exchange, a heavy dread settled, cold and sticky against his skin. As Lily stepped away, the camera lingered on her face, capturing the exact moment her world shifted. Her gaze dropped to her wrist. The watch was absent, leaving only pale skin. Slowly, she raised her naked wrist to her ear, her brow furrowing as if trying to solve an impossible equation. A whisper escaped her lips, barely audible over the sudden, heavy silence. Lily. I can still hear it ticking. We pull back from the store window to reveal Fallow Creek, a peaceful town living on borrowed time. The residents move through their days in reverse, guided by an instinct they cannot name, tending to clocks that are never wrong. They maintain this ritual to preserve the fragile peace and to keep what dwells in the inverted seconds from crossing into our world. These are the echoes, the might-have-beens, the terrified reverse images of themselves, all waiting behind doors that must never open. But ask yourself this: if every clock in your world ran backwards, how would you ever know if you were moving forward or just remembering the future? The air in the room grows thick and stale, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old gears and dust. Your own heartbeat becomes the only rhythm you can trust, a frantic drum against the silence.